Hey, I'm saying some more motherfucking shit about shit that's shitty on your fucking top, motherfucking duty-biting motherfuckers. Alright? Is that fucking enough?
Perfect.
Alright, 108.1. My surgeon called me today. He got the pathology report and he sent it to me. And it's good. The tumor, 3 centimeters. Anything under 4 centimeters is good for this kind of tumor, and 3 centimeters is the dividing line between super good and good. So it's right on the dividing line. What's going on? Timeout. We had a timeout to move the light pole. So size is good. Furman grade, which is how fucked up the cells themselves are, is pretty good. Furman gray goes from 1 to 4, like the picture of Dorian Gray, as it gets more and more fucked up. Mine's at a 2, which is 70% of tumors are at a 2, so that's no problem. So all good. The chances of recurrence are really low. Then I go online and I read the fine print, and it says that in one of they pull out a chunk of you that's almost entirely tumor, except it has a little border, like a millimeter thick around it, just to make sure they got everything. They call that the margin. And if you look at the fine print, in the margin, apparently they found a second teeny weeny 1 millimeter tumor, the size, roughly of a period at the end of a sentence, that lit up a little bit when they were looking at a slice of the tumor. A whole other mini tumor. So I write my doctor and I'm like, what the fuck is this? And he's like, I've never seen this before. And the idea is to get the tumor out before it sends tumor shit other places. And so I don't know, does this count as the tumor sending shit other places? So I gotta wait for a couple more doctor's appointments to see whether this is a more fucked up situation. But it got me thinking, among other things, that if my time is limited, I just don't have time for fucking, there's a whole industry that takes whatever bullshit Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell come up with and manufactures the most reasonable possible justification and explanation for stuff that tends to be unjustifiable. And you saw me last week. I abused a poor chair, and I feel like I might be getting less patient with explanations for bullshit. Now somebody else, Lance. You're the somebody else.
That result seems inconclusive to me.
Yeah,
so
me too.
I'm neither going to burst into tears or cheers. I saw the video from last week, and at the same time I lost my contact lenses, so I thought it would be a good thing to break these out, because I know that Rick would never hit a man with glasses. So for multiple reasons, I'm wearing these, and I hope that they see me through the remainder of our shows.
That's true. I haven't, as far back as I remember, I've never hit anybody with glasses, though if I did, I hit a lot of people. In 1974, I punched 5 or 6 people, and it's possible one of them had glasses. I don't remember, but that was 45 years ago.
Why did you hit so many people in that particular year?
I'd had a bad experience at summer camp being bullied by people who didn't really deserve to be my bullies. They were very inferior fucking bullies. If I'm going to be bullied, I want to be bullied by, like good football players and people who have like good girlfriends, and the kind of bullies that you would see in Revenge of the Nerds or a John Hughes movie, classy, like bullies, and no, these were grade B bullies. And I'm like, that's bullshit. So I'm not going to stand for any bullying. And so I decided that if anybody, said anything snide or just did anything that felt like a personal affront, I would just punch him in the cheek. And I did that to 5 or 6 people. This was 9th grade. And,
So to go back to your pathology report, so the doctor gave you a clean bill of health for all intents and purposes, and then
Yeah.
you went and did research, and
I just read the report carefully, and it mentioned another little teeny 1 millimeter tumor.
well, what did the doctor say about that?
He said he'd never seen that before, and why would he? Because they took a slice, they took the tumor out of me, then they preserved it in formalin or something, then they sliced it, then they looked at the slices, the pathologist, and in one of the slices, I guess on the edge of the big tumor, the one that's 30 millimeters, he sees a little 1 millimeter dealie, a 25th of an inch across.
So let me ask you, let me pose this hypothetical to you. And we'll talk about hypotheticals with Stephanopoulos and Trump in a little bit. But let me pose a hypothetical to you. So what's a higher probability of you being in a car accident on the 405 and losing and killing yourself, losing your life, or this thing that's 1 millimeter that your doctor didn't even mention?
I don't know. All right, so I can give you some statistics. If I'm high risk, and I don't think I'm that high risk, I mean, because
Yeah, I mean-
people have tumors that are the size of frickin' billiard balls or baseballs, and those people tend to be high risk. My tumor is the size of an eyeball.
Because doctors, like, at this stage, they don't take any chances. They tell you the worst case scenario to protect
anyway,
their asses.
the surgeon guy, he likes to think he fixes everything
So I'm
through
sure,
surgery, but then I go to another guy who's the blood and chemo guy, and he may look at this and say, yeah, we're going to put you on some chemo for a while.
but what I'm just saying is that
But I'll give you the percentage.
but real quick, what I'm just saying, just from a point of view of like litigating, so you don't sue their asses. I'm sure if this was like a something bad, or even remotely close to being bad, they would have told you.
Well,
So I think you're
they go
probably-
off, I've read the papers they use to come up with their statistics, and they're not covering their asses, they're going with their best guesses. And,
But they have to cover their asses and go their best guesses.
well, they can't cover their asses completely because it's expensive to cover your ass with via chemo, because chemo runs like 10 grand a month.
Do you think I'm making a good point, Lance?
But anyway, I've read the fucking statistics, and I can tell you,
But you're not the doctor, though.
but I can tell you the statistics. If you're high risk, you've got like a 60% chance of it coming back within 5 years. If you're low risk, you've got a less than 10% chance of it coming back within 10 years. That's a big frickin' difference.
And you're in the low risk range.
But I'm apparently in the low risk, except for this weird little 1
But
millimeter
they would
deal.
have told you though.
No, they haven't, because the surgeon didn't even see that part until I wrote him and said, hey, what about this thing? And then he said, well, I've never seen that show up in a frickin' pathology report before.
Right, so then what are you worried about?
Well, because then I go to the chemo guy. First I go to the surgeon, and maybe he said he's going to talk to the pathologist and see what the pathologist thinks.
You're like a Democratic congressman looking for a...
No, it's a fucking second tumor, and yeah, it's only 1 millimeter across, but it's 1 millimeter across can have probably, fucking 100,000 nasty little fucking cells in it.
How did you know that it was a second tumor? First of all, I understand your concern because you're saying that precisely on the margin where stuff is supposed to leak out, that's where you found something leaking out.
Yeah, but
So, it's not it's no comfort to you that the doctor said, oh, I didn't notice that,
yeah.
or
We found
I've
it on
never
the
seen
internet,
it.
though.
That's not comforting, it just means he may not have noticed something very important.
Yeah, and I mean, and why would he be looking for that? Why would anybody be looking for that? Because that's like, looking at a planet and there's a moon orbiting like 10 feet off the ground.
So it's too small to notice, but you think it symbolizes some sort of transference of the cancer into the rest of your
Well,
body.
it might be some shit that escaped, and that's what you don't want. The escapey shit is what shit getting out of the tumor sac.
When you presented that to him, what did he say?
He said, "I've never seen that before." And of course, like if there was going to be a 1 millimeter tumor someplace else, the someplace else wouldn't be within a millimeter of the big tumor, unless the tumor sent out a finger and the slice just caught a slice of the finger, and that finger, which is, you don't want this kind of tumor sending out fingers either, but it being a little finger where you only saw a slice of it, so it looks like a separate tumor, but it's really a slice of a finger poking out of a tumor. I don't know, it's probably better, but who fucking knows? And the doctor said, that it's just, it's like finding a second. I don't know what the analogy is. Anyway, let's move on to some shit. We got another.
You were saying that this means you can't put up with lies anymore. And can you lower your straight arm? You can bend it more. Yeah, there you go. And you can pull it back a little bit.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that this tells me, though, is I really feel bad because I feel as if I failed. I feel as if by now I should have convinced you that Trump is a wonderful person and that, you should be able to calmly accept my praise of him and just nod your head. And instead, you're becoming increasingly violent and deranged. You're joining the resistance, and the next step may be Antifa.
No, Antifa. I'm like 75 years too old for fucking Antifa.
By the way, that's been declared a terrorist organization.
Yeah, well, I'm not up on Antifa, but I think it's a bunch of fucking knuckleheads. I mean, like, I agree with some of their politics, but, when I used to bounce bars, the worst crowds in terms of behavior were, for some reason, reggae crowds. They just would question any kind of authority, which I represented, even if the authority was trying to, to have things just not be all fucked up in the place, like, crowd limits and maintaining a path to the door, and surprisingly, punk audiences were very well mannered. They may get out in the dance floor and beat the shit out of each other and stage dive, but when interacting with people, they were very nice.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and also, were the reggae crowds from Jamaica?
No, they were white people with dreadlocks and watch caps.
The reason I say this is that the Jamaicans are feared throughout the West Indies.
No, these were white college students in Boulder, which is 95% white anyway.
All right. So, well, listen, I just want to say that you're going to have to keep putting up with my bullshit, hopefully for the next 6 years of Trump's presidency.
Oh my God.
Followed by 4 years another 8 years of Pence's bullshit. And by the end of it, I'm hoping that the country is great again, and you're just a crumpled remnant of past failed policies.
All right, so let's bring it to. We're going to avoid too much of this week.
Oh, wait a minute. That was an interruption.
Was it? I didn't realize. Sorry.
Well, go ahead. Yeah, but I did want to say that I found something I wanted to discuss with you about Trump's racism.
Okay.
Because I keep asking you for examples of his racism.
Well, the example that is most in the media right now is the Central Park Five, where he never apologized. These are guys who spent up to 13 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit, and were exonerated via DNA. And Trump never, he took out an ad in the middle of the media frenzy that helped get them convicted, saying, you know, what did he say, bring back the death penalty and shit like that. And he took out he spent $85,000 on an ad in one of the New York papers saying, you know, convict the Central Park Five. And then once they were exonerated conclusively, he's never backed down from it.
Did he send it?
No, I'm gonna speak, and also, you've seen the near deadly consequences of teaming up against Rick.
No, I'm just saying
So-
facts. Mike Tyson was black and he stood up for him.
Look,
Listen, you can respond to that. Do
yeah,
you want to
well, I mean,
respond to that?
Trump likes black people when they're famous. He probably likes. I mean, you can like people of other races and still be racist.
Well, actually, here's the thing. I'm glad that you brought up the Central Park Five, because it goes with my theory that your side has to lie. And that if you knew the truth about Trump instead of listening to your lying, brainwashing media, you'd like him. You'd think he was a great guy. You wouldn't be in so much pain. So, without planning this, I happened to read an article on the Central Park Five. And guess what, Rick? I know all about it now. And the Central Park Five were the people that held the jogger down while somebody else raped her.
Who says that?
They have testimony, that they have confessions.
Yeah, the kids were convicted on their confessions, which were obtained without benefit of legal counsel and were.
Now, these were reasonable confessions. They gave great detail to what happened.
I haven't, you know what? I haven't read an article that lists everything
No,
in favor of them being guilty. But
You're
I mean, I've
interrupting.
seen incidental stuff that their testimony contradicts each other's.
You're interrupting.
Okay.
Right when I was about to make a point, as usual. Here's what happened. They found the DNA of one guy that managed to penetrate the vagina and have intercourse, and have an orgasm. But it turns out that was primitive DNA. At that time, they were just starting off DNA. And the police didn't take elaborate DNA. If they had, they would have found that the Central Park Five would have probably been all over it for this reason. They admitted to grabbing her. They admitted to holding a pipe. They admitted to bashing her face in with a pipe.
Did they find a pipe with fingerprints on it?
They actually found a pipe, and they found a guy that said, "Yeah, I'm the one that hit her with the pipe."
And whose fingerprints were on the pipe?
I don't know that.
Because you're saying if they had better DNA testing, they would have found
No,
DNA.
no. What I'm saying is the only DNA they found was the only DNA that they checked for, and that's the one guy that managed to leave his orgasm in this woman. The DNA of the people that held her down and bashed her face in with a pipe so that her eye bursted out of its socket and hung by the nerves, those people were the Central Park Five. And the reason that Trump's not apologizing is because it's not exactly legal to hold a woman down and bash her face in,
But the only-
even if you didn't actually come in her vagina.
The only evidence that the Central Park Five did that were the confessions that were coerced out of it.
Unfortunately, Rick, your own confessions that all jibe with each other are legal.
But they
So
were,
in other words, if I say that I murdered Camille, and you say that I murdered Camille, and we get a few of the facts wrong, I'm still going to jail.
well,
So I have confessions from people, and you have a blind hatred of Trump.
you know, I have Netflix.
And by the way, they released them not because they weren't complete monsters. They released them because the DNA of the orgasm didn't point to them. But that doesn't mean that they weren't monsters.
Yeah, what did the guy whose DNA it was, did he say there were 5 guys holding her down?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, there were 30 people at the event. And furthermore, he said the reason that he...
No, so wait, there were 30 people holding her down?
No, there were 30 people dancing around what was going on.
And
that's why, besides their own confessions, they have testimony from some of those other 30 who say that they saw this and that those individuals admitted to them what they had been doing, what part they played.
Why? How do they know these? That's 5. The Central Park 5 is 1/6 of 30.
Because what happened was this: there were 5 guys that were in the inner circle. There was one clear rapist, and then there was an outer circle that the central circle spoke to and were witnessed by.
All right, you know what? I don't want to argue about this anymore because we're going to move on faster
No,
this week.
but
let me just say, I'll do my homework. I'll read the article you read.
Okay.
I'll read some other stuff, and we'll revisit it.
Okay, but my point is this: my side doesn't have to lie. Your side has to actually lie in order to get you to hate Trump more, because Trump had every. I'm glad he spent that $85,000 asking for the death penalty, because they deserved it. I wish they had fried. And not only that, but, not only that, but they got paid. Listen to this. One of your Democratic presidential candidates,
Yeah, they got a
de
settlement.
Blasio, gave them each several $million for holding a woman down while her eye was gouged out and got her raped. Her face was beaten so badly by the other 5 guys that you like so much that she was unrecognizable by her boyfriend, who had to identify her by a ring.
But the deal is she was beaten badly, in addition to being raped.
Which doesn't bother you very much, does it? Because you hate Trump.
That's not the point. The point is that she has no memory of what happened. So there's no testimony from her because she has no memory, because she was beaten badly and she doesn't remember. Now the rest of it, I'm going to go home and research.
The rest of it, those 5 guys...
How old were those guys, Lance?
They ranged in age from 15 to 20.
No, I think 13 was the low.
No, 15.
All right, well, anyway.
And by the way, most of them had lawyers present.
So what's your point then, that let Rick respond to your ultimate point to that story?
Well, that there's plenty, Lance is saying that there's plenty of evidence that they did with the...
No, there's another point. What is the Trump reference to it?
My ultimate point is that your media has to lie to you so that you'll hate Trump more. And they're driving you crazy.
Well,
Rick,
so,
10 seconds.
All right, my point would be, A, I'll do some homework on it, but B, there had to be some legal justification for them being released after 13 years. And
I'll tell you what that is.
Well, now you're interrupting me. So them each getting a couple $1 million if that's what they got. And I'll tell you, I've got Netflix, which is the documentary about Coerced Confessions channel, the making of a murder, which is about a guy who gets railroaded, apparently, for one crime, then he gets released, then he's found guilty of committing a heinous, heinous murder, which he may or may not be guilty of. That's, there's a lot of evidence, well, both ways, really. But then he's got a mentally deficient, IQ below 80, cousin or nephew. They pull that guy in. He's a high school student. He's the age of the Central Park 5. And you get to watch on tape as the cops coerce a completely bullshit confession out of him. So it's not beyond imagining that cops who are experienced can coerce dumb young people into. And anyway, so let's move on from there.
No, I get to respond.
Fine.
What happened was, as I said earlier, they were released because the DNA evidence didn't find their sperm in the girl. they found this other guy's sperm as being the rapist. And because they were accused of rape, they were released. But they definitely, according to their own admission and the admission of witnesses who spoke with them, they definitely bashed her face and then held her down while she was being raped.
Yeah, so let me
So,
do
and
my
by
homework.
the
You
way,
said that a
wait,
bunch.
no.
But I'm gonna go do my
I'm
homework.
not finished, I'm not finished. And I just wonder about this. Is your hatred of Trump so great that now it's inconceivable to you that 5 guys actually held this girl down while she was being raped? It must have been a coerced confession. You can't believe that such a thing could have occurred when there were 30 people identified in the park, in the game, all of whom, by the way, these 5 individuals had committed violent attacks on 5 people before the rape. Don't interrupt me. Before the rape, they were identified by witnesses who they had attacked before. And it's inconceivable to you that it was not simply a coerced confession by the New York Police Department that has nothing better to do. Is that what your hatred of Trump leads you to?
You're demagoguing, but if that's the right word, it may not be. But the deal is that I believe that that at some point, 13 years later, they were found to not be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So now hold on, when you say reasonable doubt, then we got to move on from this shit because our fucking viewers get pissed when we go back and forth about hair-splitting fucking bullshit. Now let me say this, and we're going to fucking move on. I'm not saying it's inconceivable that they did the crime. What I am saying is that at some point, 13 years later, they found that they weren't guilty based on everything beyond a reasonable doubt. That may mean anything from a 10% to a 20% to an 80% to a 99% chance that they didn't commit the crimes they were convicted of. That doesn't mean that it's inconceivable. It means that it falls short of certainty. Because that's the way the fucking legal system works. So let's move on, and I'll read up on it, and if there are points in your favor, and it sounds like there's quite a bit of stuff, then I'll grant you those. But now let's move to the next thing, which is...
Oh, can we just have a little break before we start that?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, 108.2. We've noticed the Andy Reese phenomenon.
Andy Reese Jr.
Andy Reese Jr. He's the guy who doesn't have abs, who is now the heavyweight champion, boxing champion of the world. He calls himself the first Mexican heavyweight champion, though he's from Corona. He's American. His parents are from Mexico, but he's an American. He's an American citizen. But when asked if he was going to go to the White House to meet with Trump after winning the heavyweight championship, he said, "No, I'm going to go to the Mexican White House." So I thought we could talk about, because everybody's a little worried about me now, talk about the last time we punched somebody. And the last time I punched somebody was a coworker in December 1998 or 1999. And you know, the guy kind of deserved it, but it's never good to punch a coworker. How about you guys?
Well, first of all,
Or girls, in the case of our director who wants his or her gender to remain indeterminate.
Pronoun.
well, first of all, I am a coworker.
Yes, that's true.
So,
But at the time, I was right now I'm on a beta blocker that blocks adrenaline, and adrenaline is the fight or flight hormone. So at the time, I was not on a beta blocker, so I was pissier. Now I am a model of even-temperedness.
I'm just concerned that your hatred of Trump will spill into a way of vigilante justice against one of his supporters, or his supporters are.
I don't hate Trump as much as I hate that he's president. I mean, Trump was perfectly fine as a piece in the rich mosaic of Americana. You know, a Britney Spears or a Michael Jackson, a colorful character.
Just before you go on, can you just name 5 policies why you hate Trump, and then last year you named 5 policies why you love Trump?
All right.
Go.
The first thing is this week he said, that he would accept information from a foreign government.
1. 2.
A lot of the wall stuff seems intentionally cruel.
3.
Creating a problem on the board, creating a lot of the crisis on the border seems to be at least partially a consequence of his policy.
Okay.
Okay. Also, the people he appoints to his cabinet are super incompetent and kind of grifty. What's his name? Wilbur Ross. I used to own a mutual fund, an Invesco, a mutual fund company run by Ross, and it was supposed to be a great company. And I'm like, what? These are shitty returns. Why isn't this fund working right? And it turns out Wilbur Ross was milking the mutual funds, stealing money from the funds. And this guy's in charge of what? The Commerce Department?
And number 5?
I could talk about the lying, and
No.
I guess just off the top of my head, the lying, because now we're in this shit with Iran, which may or may not have mined the Gulf of Hormuz and fucked up a couple tankers, or might have shot airborne projectiles at the fucking tankers. And it seems, out of everything that could have happened, I guess the most reasonable explanation is Iran being assholes, but there's this extra degree of uncertainty because from an administration that's said so many things that are demonstrably untrue that it adds uncertainty to shit that we should want to be more certain about. Okay, that's it.
Last.
I'd like to address, I could give you a 5 right now. 1, crushed ISIS. 2, pulled out of the Iran deal that was going to give Iran a nuclear bomb in about 5-6 years. 3, standing up to China for intellectual property violations and trying to dump their stuff on our economy and really pressuring China. 4, lowest unemployment since 1969. 5 would be, he has been incredibly supportive of Israel. He supported their annexation of the Golan Heights. He cut off all aid to the Palestinians. 6, he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem.
Wait, you're not allowed to pile on.
7, he got NATO to contribute an extra $100 billion to their own defense, so it isn't the burden of the American taxpayer to support a bunch of cheese-eating Europeans.
All right, come on.
7,
You don't want.
wait, 8, he got Mexico to put 6,000 troops on the border.
Mr. Director.
So that they would.
You asked for 5, and now we're at 8.
He got Mexico to put 6,000
Oh, Ms.
troops
Director also.
on the border, so that they would prevent
all right.
the Central Americans from coming up to our country and migrating into it against the law. He turned Mexico into an ally when they were fighting us by threatening them, and I admire that kind of strength.
Okay.
Another thing
No,
he
come
did.
on.
Well, am I allowed to elaborate? Because you said he lied. Can I say some more facts instead of, ooh, I read in the New York Times liberal newspaper that he said an untruth? Can I say some more things? Today, for example, he signed a bill to reform our criminal justice system so people that aren't guilty of violent crimes can't spend the rest of their lives in prison, can be released in a reasonable amount of time. And he also approved a law stating that if you're terminally ill,
All right.
you have a right to try
All right,
a
you've
medical.
given 10 reasons.
You have a right to try a medicine that might save your life, even if the FDA hasn't approved it.
All right, that's 10. I gave 5. You gave 10.
You
That's.
can respond, Rick.
I don't want to respond. I want to move on.
Oh.
So, because we have a second dog, because my mother-in-law's dog was in an elevator with another old lady and either bit the lady on the ass or jumped up on the old lady, and the old lady's ass was so fragile that the dog's claws just poked into it. They found puncture wounds in the old, apparently, we haven't seen pictures, but, and since all the witnesses are old ladies who don't, one of them's in assisted living, and nobody's observation skills and memories are any good. So anyway, we're told that one old lady ended up with some punctures in her butt. And so the dog has been 86 from the senior living center and is now living with us. The dog's never bitten anybody or any dogs before. The dog seems enthusiastic, but not biting, and not aggressive that way. Just, wants to. But the upshot is, if your dog hurts somebody, the dog is 86 from the joint. So living with us, and which brings up the topic, what do you think of dogs? And also the related topic, dogs versus cats. Lance.
Well, I would just like to say that I'm from the 60s, and back then, I bit my old lady's ass every chance I got. The second thing I'd like to say is recently, the age-old question has finally been answered. They finally did tests on the brain mechanisms, the thinking part of the animals, and they found it's true, dogs are smarter than cats. So
How they do that? What was the test?
I think they tested the quickness of the reaction to stimuli on the brain by attaching things to the brain. It wasn't a psychological test. It was an actual test of the gray matter.
All right. Well.
So I mean, just for anybody watching this show for 100 episodes, just hearing that one fact out of my mouth was worth it, because it'll save you a lot of confusion in your life.
I like dogs and I like cats, and I think that there's enough variation in personality among each species that you can get what you want within reason from each. The thing that makes me nervous about cats, especially cats in a quantity of more than 2, say, in a domicile, is the risk of toxoplasmosis. Toxoplasmosis is this parasitic disease that in mice makes them horny for cat piss. So they smell a cat, and they run out and they get eaten by the cat, and then the parasite passes through the cat and does some other stuff, gets to mosquitoes that bite the mice. It's a long thing. But when toxoplasmosis gets into people, it may make you schizophrenic, and I would hate to be turned schizophrenic by, my pet. But I would think that, reasonable prudence might, reduce the risk of that. And I mostly have dogs. I've lived with cats for short periods of time, and they're a little aloof, but perfectly pleasant, except for the one that went right before it would claw you or bite you. I didn't live with that cat, but that family had a plaque that once the cat had drawn your blood, you could sign the plaque of honor that you'd been attacked. But I love dogs, But in general, they're a little disappointing because they could have more depth. They tend to want the things they want, which can include, human affection, and they can return human affection with their own love. But they don't have a lot of dimensions to them. There's food, there's sleeping, there's playing, and apparently, according to what I've read, when wolves became domesticated into dogs, dogs ended up less smart than wolves because humans were now doing the thinking for both species. And then dogs ended up with, extra nose power and less brain power because the dogs were doing the smelling for both species. But seeing dogs' limitations, mental and emotional, limitations of consciousness almost. Dogs are definitely, and cats are definitely conscious. They definitely feel, they experience things. But seeing their limitations makes me a little bit sadly aware of our human limitations, because when you look at what we can do and what we want, we don't have a lot of variation either. We're concerned about food and sex and physical necessities like sleeping, comfort, and we've got some added stuff that's been helpful to us, like making discoveries and pursuing beauty. But still, a lot of human wants and abilities seem constrained, compared to our future half-robot overlords. But in the future, we'll be more complicated, we'll be augmented. In the future, dogs and cats will be genetically tweaked, and you'll be able to, if you so desire, you'll be able to, get a dog that's twice as smart as today's border collie, will understand, 300 words, and be able to open, a whole bunch of doors and latches.
They say dogs are like much or smarter than purebred dogs. Do you have a comment on that, either one of you guys? Or
No.
why? Do you know why?
You look at modern purebreds, and they demonstrate what happens when you breed solely to amplify certain traits and ignore what's happening with other traits, like mushed-in face dogs, like pugs. They have breathing problems because they have no snout, called mushed in, and German shepherds have hip dysplasia. Every purebred, I don't know about every purebred species, but I would think.
Pull your hand in.
Okay. I would think that 80% of purebred species have problems due to overbreeding.
Well, the reason I think I've decided I love dogs more than cats, and I never took a stand on it until now, and I realized, with a dog, you are the head of the pack. And so they love you. They're loyal, and they love you. And they love you more than you'll ever be loved by anybody else. Dogs are loyal. They're better than people. They don't have free will to do the wrong thing. But because you're the head of the pack, they're loyal. They'll die for you. They are brave. They'll attack something 10 times their size to defend you. They are, unless you do something to hurt them, they're ridiculously affectionate. So I think I'm coming down on the side of the dogs.
I'll agree that dogs are innocent, and that is a nice thing. When I'm looking at other drivers who are pissing me off by driving badly, one of my judgments is innocent and just a crap driver, or a crap driver because they're a dick. And innocent people, I have to withdraw my loathing and contempt. They're just an honestly bad driver who is a victim of technology that's slightly beyond them, perhaps, and driving conditions in LA, which are just bad.
Wait, I have something to say. So I don't want anyone to interrupt me for a second, because I know we're turning into a kind of a lightning round right now, and I'd like to hold forth for a minute.
Okay.
In my late 50s, I have come to a conclusion. You can put your arms down.
Oh,
Well, this is my wisdom. When I was young, I found out that I could teach people how to draw. And it was a big revelation. I never thought I could, but I did. And then I found that I could teach them to draw as well as me. And then I found that I could teach them that they would get so good that they would go off and succeed as artists. So these are three new things to me. Then I found that a few years after that, they would take my name off their resume and steal my ideas. And put the name of somebody really famous that they studied with for 3 days on the resume. And so I've learned a lot from living so long, because I got to see all 6 stages. And it got me to think about society. And I realized that while they needed something from me, the student loved me more than anybody ever had, because I was giving them what they wanted. It was pure. I was making their dreams come true. And then when they didn't need me anymore, in fact, I was an impediment, or not even an impediment, just, they didn't need me, they would immediately turn on me as soon as I was no longer necessary. But it took a span of 15 years for all this to happen. And it happens with great regularity. So what this tells me about society is this. Capitalism is the most brilliant form of government, because it keeps people having to do nice things for each other. Because given the opportunity to do the wrong thing, people will. So in other words, my attitude is a lot more like people are being kept in line by their religion, by the laws of the government, by capitalism needing to be good to a client, needing to fulfill a contract. And those things are making people be nice to each other. Because what I found about human nature is, you remove one of those building blocks, as soon as people are constrained, they'll do something rotten. And that is my new conclusion about humanity, that humanity is, to a large extent, as good as its society is. Human beings are. All right, that's all I have to say.
I'll semi-agree with you. I find that humans are reliable up to a point, which means they're also fallible up to that point. That people are good until, on average, stressed a certain amount. People's goodness will go away at various levels. A really good person, you can push really hard before they break into not goodness. A shit heel will will break under no stress at all.
Exactly. Like the people that, were captured by the Nazis. First they decided they couldn't go along, and they started to hide Jews. And then they were captured and they were tortured and didn't give up the locations of the Jews. We're talking, there's that end of the scale, and then there's the scale of the people that saw the women in France that would sleep with the German officers.
And then there's the people who thought, I can get a really good apartment if I turn in the Jews.
Exactly.
So a good society is set up so that most people aren't pushed past their breaking point to become a-holes. And in relation to capitalism, this word came up at the gym. Somebody asked me what it means, and it's a really good word because it makes you sound smart if you use it, which is fungible and fungibility. And fungibility is how easily a material asset can be turned into value, usable value. And money is the most fungible stuff because it's already its own value. And you can use money, at least you could before money was replaced by, credit cards, which is still a form of money. You can use money to buy anything viable. There's no limit. There are very few limits on what you can buy with money. Money's completely fungible. Diamonds, however, are much less fungible because whatever you spend on the diamonds, you're only going to get about half back if you're lucky. Gold is less fungible than cash because you have to find a place that pays money for gold. And in the olden days before there was money, the barter system was dealing with a bunch of stuff of very limited fungibility. You had sheep. The sheep could only be used. You could only get your value for the sheep from somebody who needed sheep. And then cash comes along and it makes everything, it lubricates everything, and with something that's, close to 100% fungible. There you go.
Just a quick question for both of you guys. Do prosecutors sometimes use that approach to make things uncomfortable to get their clients to sing or to compose? Lance?
I think this is a really important question because one of the things that the current troubles that we have right now with the Trump investigation and the investigation of the investigators is we've revealed to the lay public how often people are coerced into making deals with their prosecutors. And I've heard on a very low level that a lot of people go to jail because their lawyer comes in and says, listen, they've got a good case against you. We think you're going to get 10 years, but if you confess to this thing, you'll get 1 year. So there's a lot of deal making that I don't think is fair. There's a lot of, if you say this about your boss, we'll let you go. And the Republicans were going to try to use Hillary Clinton's aides to sing against her, but the Obama Justice Department actually gave them all immunity. On the other hand, the Democrats are now trying to get people like Cohn and Manafort to say things against Trump by basically torturing them. Manafort, well, we've gone over how badly Manafort's being treated. He's been sent to Rikers now.
I think Barr pulled him out of Rikers.
I hope so. But the point I'm trying to make is that we're finding that out. We're finding out that justices, that it's possible for one of hundreds of low-level judges to be picked by the Democrats in order to say that a presidential directive is unconstitutional and stop right there something the president was going to do. Now, a celebrated case would be the ban on immigration from Muslim countries that are at war with us. But also, a famous case was when California voted in Proposition 8, which banned gay marriage. That was overturned by one judge who said the people of California can't make that decision. So we're finding out that a great deal of things that are going on in our justice system are absolutely in need of reform. One last thing, now that I think of it, it turns out that the FISA court, that is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court or whatever, the court that approves our intelligence community having gives them the ability to spy on American citizens, we found out that that they'll do whatever the hell they want. It looks like Obama appointees were simply giving the intelligence community the permission to spy on Obama's opponents. So we now can't have a secret court that previously was supposed to be protecting us from terrorism and sabotage from within. There's talk now of ending that court entirely because it's been so corrupted.
All right, we weren't going to bring this up, so I got 2 points. One is, in junior high, I learned this strategy, and I didn't get in that many fights, but I learned this was a good way to go. If I got caught fighting with a kid, and we get hauled into the office, the other kid goes first and goes, he did this, and he did this, and he did this, and da-da-da. And then I say, well, I think it's both our faults. And I win because the other kid sounds like an asshole. That also works in couples counseling. The person well, actually, no, couples counseling works a little bit different. You have to have some complaints in couples counseling. It's the opposite almost, where if you go in and you think everything and say everything's fine, then you're the asshole because obviously you're the source of all the problems. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I'll come back to my first point, but first, the American judicial system wouldn't work without plea bargaining because there are not enough resources for everybody to have a jury trial. And whether it's the ideal system, probably not, but it's probably among the best systems. But yeah, it requires a lot of cases to be settled without having to go to a jury, which is an incredibly time-consuming and resource-consuming deal. But I got to say, if somebody is saying that it's all like the Democrats doing this, and you know if somebody says it's all one side, they did this, they did this, they did this, that's, I would say, automatically suspect. If somebody's able to enumerate fuck-ups on both sides, I mean, no president makes it through a term in office without a bunch of fuck-ups. Okay, hold on.